Just want to thank you for joining us today, and before I get started, I want to thank the Rice Research Board for their funding. We couldn't do the amount of work that we do without their support for our research projects, and especially for our grad students. It's able for them to get a degree and work on that Rice Research Board money is really good for our program. What I'm going to talk about today is really two things. I'm going to talk about Previsia rice as well as Loyant herbicide and some things that we're doing with it. First, I'll talk about Previsia, and behind me, I've been working with Dr. Formosa on some experimental lines of Previsia. In this particular trial, we have 3 experimental Previsia lines, including PVL01 and PVL02 as comparisons with the new lines. And what we've done is we have 2 applications, an early post followed by a later post 10 to 14 days after the initial treatment. And we're looking at 3 rate regimes for Previsia. The first rate would be the X rate of Previsia, 15.5 ounces or 15.5 ounces followed by 15.5 ounces. So it would get early post of 15.5, and 10 to 14 days later, another 15.5 ounce shot. The second rate would be a 2X rate twice, 31 ounces followed by 31 ounces, and then the third is a 3X rate, 45.5 ounces followed by 45.5 ounces. And one thing with these Previsia lines, the grass herbicides generally have been historically, we see a lot of injury with them or have some injury with these varieties. I'm not sure we'll ever get out of that with this technology. It's not like we lucked up with clincher where we really never seen any injury from clincher, but the grass herbicides in general are going to give us injury from time to time. This year's been a prime example of the type of injury that we'll see with the grass herbicides, especially if you take 2 to 3 weeks ago, we stayed cloudy for 4 to 5, 10 days in a row, coupled with the timings that we were putting our fertilizer applications out, our pre-flood fertilizer applications, and then flooding up. And then what that would do is kind of set those plants up for injury. And we saw that some in these plots this year, the PVL01 being the more sensitive to the Previsia across all rates. And then probably the most tolerant of all is the PVL02. The other 3 lines, the experimental lines or numbered lines that he has in this particular plot behind me, we saw some injury with the 1X and then progressively more with the 2 and the 3X rate. But it's more of a patience thing. If you can give it 7 to 10 days after treatment, you'll get some yellow flashes, little banding of yellow in the vegetation, and this will occur across the crop. PVL01, if you've probably heard me say before, looks injured before you ever treat it. It looks like it's got 10 to 15% injury because it's such a more of a yellow type vegetation naturally. And PVL02 probably being the darker of the ones that we've looked at so far from a darker green standpoint. It's just a much better looking rice. Talk a little bit about Loyant now. Loyant is a herbicide that we use a lot here in South Louisiana. It fits our systems well because of the water-seeded systems that we have. We also tend to plant a lot earlier in March when it's cooler conditions, as well as we tend to flood earlier in this particular region of the state compared with North Louisiana and into Arkansas. And I think that's one of the reasons we've seen less injury with that herbicide is because we're putting it out at a much more timely manner. And we don't see the type of injury that we see in North Louisiana and into Arkansas. One of the things that we're doing this year, and it's kind of feeds off of what's actually going on in the real world, a lot of our field reps are trying to look at this herbicide applied in combination with a urea fertilizer application. So we're doing some of that where we sort of, quote, impregnating that Loyant onto that urea fertilizer. We're doing some with timings as well as looking at flood applications. We're doing some pre-flood applications versus post-flood. If you're just comparing the fertilizer application to the spray application, by far the spray application is much better. But if you get into sensitive areas where you have a sensitive crop next door or you're next to into a neighborhood for some reason, then it may be better to actually put the herbicide out on the fertilizer granule. You get less chance of drift and less chance of off-target movement of that herbicide to sensitive crops and ornamental plants. So what we've done is we're looking at the application of this again on dry ground and in the flood, and as I said earlier, much better on flooded area. In a flooded situation, I would recommend not put it in it on dry ground and then following up with a flood 24 to 48 hours. It just is not doing what it needs to do. But when you look at it dropped into with a fertilizer dropped into the flood, it has good activity on the weeds that are below the water or anything that's basically 4 inches or smaller. If you get some of the aquatic weeds like pickleweed, bull tongue, creeping primrose, those kind of things, if it's up out of the water, burrhead, another one. If it's up out of the water, it has a little bit more trouble. It takes a little bit longer to get the full control of those weeds. What it does do in a lot of cases, it tends to stop the growth, and you may not necessarily get rid of them in 100% control, but it ceases the growth. They'll be there for a longer period of time. They're probably not competitive at all. It's just going to be a learning process to us as researchers as well as growers and consultants, as getting used to seeing that plant not moving after the time of application. We're also doing some rate evaluations as well, going down to as low as 4 ounces, 8 ounces, and 12 ounces. We just had planted our red rice area in the last few weeks. We were delayed because of rain, and also I was waiting on a new piece of equipment before I planted the red area. And what that's done for us is actually in our initial granular work with Loyant, we saw some things that we need to evaluate. So today we're going to start establishing some trials on some pegging rice. Again, looking at how low can we go on pegging rice and if there's any issues there and get any type of injury. But I think Loyant has a really nice fit for us, whether sprayed or on fertilizer granule, and I think it's a lot of potential and it really fits well into our programs here. Got a few experimental herbicides in the program this year. Nothing much to really talk about there, but I think there's some more herbicides coming along that have some potential that can make a difference in our production systems here in South Louisiana. Again, I want to thank the Rice Research Board for their funding. I want to thank the guys that work for me as well, my grad students. John Saunier, the crawfish unit, helps me out quite a bit. Sam Rustum, Connor Webster, Bradley Greer, and David Walker have really helped us out a lot in the field. They're all grad students, all PhD students, and hopefully have those guys prepared to go out into the real world here in a couple of years. Thank you.